Hello and welcome to another episode of Sharing Wisdom. I'm your host, Angie Wisdom. And today my friend Jason Greer is here joining us. He is the president of Greer Consulting, and he's in the thick of it when it comes to employees and business and all things that are kind of disrupting the workforce. So I'm really excited to have him here. He's the author of Bias, Racism, and the Brain, and he's going to share today what's going on in the workforce, kind of getting back to it, some of the things that are coming up for employees and leaders as well. And we're also going to ask him some questions about like the current relations of what's happening out there and probably what we're going to see in the coming year as far as the workforce as well. So Jason, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Angie. I really look for this conversation.
Me too, because, well, we both deal with leaders every single day. And so when we were talking offline a little bit about what our topics were and what you wanted to bring to the table, my ears so perked up, and we won't get into it right this minute, but you really got me excited when you started to talk about what about leaders? Nobody ever asked them if they need a break and how they're doing. So we are definitely going to get to that. But I know that people that are listening right now are going, oh my gosh, me. Yes, please give me that information. But you really are in the thick of it. I mean, anytime there is something kind of, I hate to use the word crazy, but crazy going on, and there's turbulence and there's disruption, you are there. You are on CNBC, you are on Fox, you are on like all these news, stations sharing your insights. So kind of catch us up. What is that even like, being in the thick of it, of everything going on out there?
It's a crazy life, but the most blessed life I could ever ask for. Look, I'm a social worker by training. I'm a bachelor's degree in social work, my master's degree in social work, and a master's in human resources management. So I always thought that I would be some type of counselor, right? Some type of counselor, some type of advocate, but really on the grassroots level. And what I have evolved into is I'm a corporate social worker in many ways because I am going into these employee situations. I don't care if it's strikes. I don't care if there's breakdown negotiations. You have a company who's seeking to remain union free, and I'm coming in trying to convince a group of employees not to join the union and give the company a chance, all the way to diversity issues, employee relations issues. I am on the road 200, I'm going to stop saying 200 days a year. It's more like 225 days a year. Wow. And I legitimately am traveling this country and hopefully one day traveling the world, helping to not only put out fires, but to make life better for employees and make life better for management as well.
What an amazing mission. And now I can see why you feel like you live such a blessed life. I mean, you're truly out there Absolutely. Impacting and making a difference. I'm curious, does that always put you in the hot seat with, the other side? Because it seems like you're going to be on one side or, well, usually the employee side, right? So does it kind of put you in the hot seat from the other angle?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When I say that I'm in the hot seat, it's always in the beginning because no one wants to hear the change agent, because the change agent looks like somebody's paying you. They know somebody's paying you. So is it you really care about us, or are you just doing the will of the people who are paying you? I'm called the Employee Whisperer, officially got trademarked last October. So I'm proud of that. And I did not know that people call me the Employee Whisperer until one day a client who became a client called me and said, I'm looking for the Employee Whisperer. And I thought that somebody was playing a prank on my phone. Employee Whisperer. Whose dumb idea is that to call? What is that? Right. And he started laughing and he goes, I don't know if you know this, but many of the people who have referred me to you call you the Employee Whisperer because you have this uncanny ability to get right there in the middle between the employer and the employee and to actually help both sides to interpret what the other side is saying. So I go into these situations where first day, no one likes me. And I say no one likes me because they are angry, they are frustrated, and the employees can't be angry and frustrated at the employer because they are scared to death of losing their jobs. The employer is scared to death about showing their frustration with the employees because they're scared to death of these employees just walking off the job. So I come in and I sit right there in the middle and I sort of do what we call social negotiations and I bring both parties back together. So it goes from, man, we hate your guts, get the heck out of here, to at the end, when you coming back, man? Because I get invited to church services. I have employees who bring me food. I have managers who have tried to hook me up with their daughters because they said their daughters, they need a good husband and they believe that I'll be a good husband for them, right? I mean, it's just been an incredible, fun life.
That is so interesting that, you go from this hate in the beginning to love in the end,
Right.
but in that moment, well, I guess let me ask you this. When you first started it, did you know you were getting into this situation where I'm going to walk in here and everyone's going to hate me?
No, no. In fact, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I just knew that I needed to
Mm,
pay my mortgage. Right. And so
mm,
I, man, Angie, you talk about the fact that I've been on CNBC, MSNBC, Fox. I mean, I'm so incredibly blessed to be in this arena where my day looks like I can be in Stamford, Connecticut, like where I am right now, and working for a large client of mine. And I do the work, and then I have to, you know, drive back to my hotel room because that's the only place I get good Wi-Fi. And then I have a CNBC interview or I have an MSNBC interview. And then I change out my suit and I go right back out and I'm working with the employees and the executives. So it went from, man, I cannot believe this is my life to this is just my life and I just do it.
mm, hmm. Yeah, often I feel like when people start their careers and like you said, you didn't really know what you're getting into, that you find yourself in these situations and being in the middle seat like that between, the employer and the employee is not easy. I mean, like you said, the emotions are high. There's always
Yes.
something at risk here. So it takes a very special person to be able to do that. And an extra special person to get in the hot seat on a lot of these news stations. It's not always easy what, the reporters or the newscasters on CNBC are throwing at you.
Well, you know it. You've been there. I mean, we are blessed to have worked with one of the best in the industry, which is Lynn Smith. And
Yeah.
I feel like Lynn Smith has prepared me for a little bit of everything. I mean, I'll never forget.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a interview for CBS, and my hotel phone never rings, never. And all of a sudden, I'm at the tail end of my last answer. I'm giving it, I'm feeling it, and then the phone starts ringing. I'm like,
Oh
what
no.
is that? And then the phone keeps ringing, it keeps ringing, it keeps ringing. It turned out to be housekeeping asking if I need extra towels. Right.
Oh my
I'm just
gosh.
like, but again, because Lynn has prepared me, I just rolled with it and didn't think about
Yeah.
it. And blessedly, it never showed up in the interview.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, and then you learn something, right? You're like, okay, phone goes off the hook, unplugged every time
There
you're
it
on the
is.
interview in the hotel room. Always a
Exactly.
lesson to learn. Yes. Well, tell me, I mean, what is kind of going on out there right now when you are showing up at different companies and talking about the change of the workforce in general? What are you
Yeah.
seeing are those hot topics right now?
Wage compression is huge. And if you
Mm,
don't know, if anyone doesn't know what wage compression looks like, it's I can work for a company. Let's say I work for General Motors for 10 years. I've given General Motors everything that I have to give. But my salary, or in the case of a line level employee, my hourly rate has sort of capped out at X amount of dollars.
mm-hmm,
Well, it just so happens that we exist in this really funky time called life post COVID. And employers are still doing their best to get employees in. And unfortunately, for employees who work for a business, new employees are coming in at a rate that's either at their rate or higher than their rate because that's what the
mm,
market dictated because there was so much competition to get an employee, right? And employees knew it, and they were basically playing employer after employer against each other to see who would give them the best salary. And why wouldn't they?
mm-hmm,
So wage
right.
compression issues are huge because employees are taking it, tenured employees are taking it as a slap in the face that you're going to give Angie, $20 more an hour than you're giving me. And I've been here with you and you know my work. So wage compression is a big issue. Strikes across the country. I mean,
Mm,
we are seeing strikes, we're seeing walkouts, we're seeing sick outs, we're seeing just the way that social media has helped to sort of galvanize employees because it used to be you would hear whispers if you were managers, you would hear whispers of impending job actions.
mm-hmm,
Now through social media, your employees can talk to each other and through the internet, they can talk to each other. You have no idea that they're even having these conversations.
mm-hmm,
Um, Diversity issues. So it's weird that, during the George Floyd moment, we had all of a sudden we were having another reckoning with racism, right? And it was the All Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter debate, which is the dumbest debate I've ever heard in my life, right? And it was sort of this clash, but it was also this, we saw corporations, both for profit and not for profit, start to have this open mind toward what diversity and inclusion will look like in their workplace. We saw, an increased focus on hiring people from different backgrounds to come into these organizations. And now what we've seen is sort of a complete 180, where because of social media pressure, because of the political current as it is, you're starting to see more and more businesses that are contracting, that are pulling back their D&I services because in their policies and procedures, because they're concerned about, media outcry. They're concerned about social media outcry, as well as what in some cases you're starting to see the board of directors are having issues with the idea of honoring inclusivity when they truly believe that merit should be what people should be judged by, which I always find funny when I hear people say, well, we should judge people based on their merit, not based on their race, not based on their gender. And I kind of laugh. I'm like, well, it's funny that the board of director who made that statement, his son happens to occupy 2 additional board seats and 3 managerial positions within the company. But I guess they just earned that, right?
Right, right, right. Yeah.
Maybe it has nothing to do with the fact that they have your same last name. They just earned it. So those are some of the challenges we're seeing. But one thing that I don't know that people are talking enough about is, or 2 things. One, how artificial intelligence is changing the workplace.
Yeah.
Because I was on CNBC last week and I made the statement to them. We were talking about layoffs in the tech sector. And you look at the fact that 2024 is unfortunately starting just like 2023 in terms of mass layoffs. You look at what's happening with eBay, you look at what's happening across the board. What no one is talking about is the fact that many of these jobs are being replaced by artificial intelligence. But, and I'm going to speak directly to my human resources people because I spend so much time in the HR arena. 28% of the jobs that were laid off in the tech sector were human resources because they've discovered that artificial intelligence could actually automate many of the processes that they traditionally hired people to do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's changing. Artificial intelligence is changing the landscape. And I'd also say we spend a lot of time talking about the plight of the employee, but we don't spend enough time talking about the plight of the middle manager, because you have the middle manager experiencing what I like to call managerial crunch, the management crunch, because she is catching hell from the employees down below her. She's catching hell from the executives above her, and she's caught in the middle. And here's the biggest problem. She's trying to serve 2 masters, and nobody's asking her, how in the hell are you doing? And what can we do to support you?
That's huge right there. And that's what really caught my attention when we started talking. And I do want to talk about wage compression and some of the other issues that you brought up. But I feel like the leadership piece is so key right now because of some of these reasons, right? Because of the wage compression, the different pieces now as far as we've got to slow down the economy. We've got layoffs. We've got all these different pieces coming in. You've got that leader, that kind of middle manager that's feeling the brunt of it from both sides. And it, even when you said that to me, it made me think for a second, like, yeah, everyone's always like, how do I be a great leader? How do I be a great leader? They're so giving, but yeah, how do we turn it back to them and make sure that they are okay?
Organizations should recognize that your middle managers especially are so critically important because they're the reason why you as an executive can leave your office at 5 o'clock and trust that everything's going to be okay, because they're the ones who are in there doing the dirty work day in and day out, and they're scared to say anything to you because they don't want to risk their opportunity to be promoted. They're scared to say anything to you because they don't want you to believe that in some form or fashion they are not good at their jobs. So what they do is they put their heads down and they just continue to grind and they continue to grind. But what we're starting to see is managers, especially middle managers, not just leaving their jobs, but just leaving their industries as a whole because they are burned out. It's costing them their families. It's costing them their livelihood. It's costing them their mental and their emotional well-being. And until organizations really critically address those issues within that managerial rank, we're going to continue to lose people. And even if we don't lose them in terms of the fact that they leave the organization, we lose them in terms of their passion. And once you kill a person's passion, you've killed them as a whole. Right.
And what I find so interesting about that is that trickles down. I'm always trying to work with a leader to lead by example, right? And if you are grinding away and you're not taking care of yourself and you're getting burned out, you're pretty much kind of setting the example for the people who you're leading. And they're
Absolutely.
fearful to do anything different because they're like, if she's doing it, if he's doing it, then I need to be doing it. And then we create this culture that really doesn't serve the company well at all and isn't going to take the company to where it ultimately wants to go.
Well, the movie Remember the Titans. I mean, you can remember the Titans. You could basically, because I love Denzel Washington. That's my dude. Denzel Washington's my dude. So
Mm-hmm.
anything Denzel's playing in, I promise you, I watched it at least 6 or 7 times. But Remember the Titans is a great movie. There's a lot of great clips in it. But there's this statement that was made in the movie that I stand by. Attitude always follows leadership. If you
Mm,
have a great attitude, you best believe your employees are going to have great attitudes. If you suck in terms of your attitude, you best believe your employees are going to follow suit. But what we ask, we live in this culture, this hustle culture where you
mm-hmm.
can, just go on social media and you see things like move past your fear, be strong, be brave. Yeah, it feels good for about 5 seconds. And then I go back to being fearful. Then I go back to being everything but brave. Then I go back to being everything but strong. Oftentimes, when I'm feeling that way, it's because there are issues going on that I haven't addressed, or I don't have anyone to address them with me. That's what managers are going through because they get in
Mm-hmm.
these meetings with the top dogs, with their bosses, and their bosses say all the right things. Go team. We need to pull this together. I believe in you. Here's a pizza party. Here's a gift card. Here's this. Here's that. What what if you gave them all those things and you just sat them down and said, I really want to hear from you about what you need from me,
Yeah. It's a lot of
right?
external things they're delivering, but internally
Yeah,
it's like, where's the work there? Where's the space for them to be heard and
exactly.
to have that time to process and share?
Absolutely.
So key. So what are you bringing to companies now when you're seeing this and you're getting involved in a company and you're going, wow, this leader is kind of burned out. It's affecting your culture. Where are you showing up and what are you recommending that people can do?
Yeah, great question. So I show up from what I love to call the deep dive assessment process. And the deep
Mm-hmm.
dive assessment process is where I come in and I meet directly with your employees. And when I say me, I'm talking my team as well. We come in and we meet with your employees, we meet with your managers, and we are actively listening to what they have to say. And we're not just listening for the sake of let me pacify them. We're listening from the perspective of give me what I need so that I can go back to the top dogs to give you what you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is we're taking the voices and people often wonder, is there some voodoo or some, mental magic that I do with these employees? You'd be amazed at how impressed people are based on the fact that you just listen because we live in the society, Angie, where we are so interconnected, so
Mm-hmm.
interconnected. I had a conversation with a grade school classmate of mine on Saturday only because Facebook reconnected us, right? I bring that
Crazy,
up
right?
because social media will make you think that we're constantly listening to each other, we're constantly connected to each other, and we're really not.
Mm.
Because the art of active listening has become such a, a superpower because so few people use it.
Oh,
And
for
so
sure.
what we do is we not only practice active listening, we also use close to 30 years worth of experience in the field to communicate that to management, to create recommendations that are based around our industry experience, in addition to what we know is going to help you to move your company culture to the top, as opposed to the fact that it might be languishing toward the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, what we do is we just bring people back together. That's what we do.
So good. And, as you're saying that, the first thing that popped in my mind was executives, I should say, the employers, they often hear things with emotion. They often hear them from a defensive angle. And I think that's
Yes.
kind of what do you experience creates that gap where the employee doesn't want to say anything because the owner, the employer always has an answer, always has a rebuttal or judgment. And so there's never
Yes.
any progress being made. So it's like, forget it. I just won't say anything, but really just giving that space to hear. And it's almost like translating. I feel like you're
Mhm.
doing, you have to translate this information because communication tends to be one of the biggest hurdles for people. How do you communicate effectively? How do you hear it effectively? And what do you do with it? So you're almost like a translator, it sounds like in there.
Oh, absolutely. And part of the reason, and so let's talk about executives. Part of the reason why executives get so defensive is not because they are jerks by nature. It's because
Mm-mm.
no one sees what they're doing on a daily basis to try to make life better for you, the employee. And it
Yeah.
never fails that when I bring this information to them, they're like, wait a minute, but we were doing this for them. We were doing that for them. We did this for them. The problem that companies have is they are great at external marketing. Everybody knows their product, but they suck at internal marketing in terms
Mhm.
of people within the organization knowing what the organization is doing for them on a daily basis.
So would you say that sometimes that's like it's all there, it's just not being communicated effectively?
I say this as somebody who has been through the fires, the battles. I don't care what industry, name an industry, and I can tell you a story that I've been through.
Mm-hmm.
The one common denominator amongst all of these industries, amongst all these companies that I've had the great pleasure of working for, is they already had the tools in place.
Yeah.
No one knew they were there.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. So talking about all the fires that you've been through, what was kind of the most turbulent, the biggest fire that you've had to navigate in all these different situations and topics that have come into the workplace?
It's interesting because I've been through some of these things that oftentimes I forget, and it's somebody who has to bring it back to me to remind me of a story.
Mm,
So my one of my favorite clients, probably my favorite client in the world, and I'm not going to give the name of the client out of protection
sure.
for them in terms of the work that we did. They were my first client. They were the
Mm,
first people who really took a chance on me, right? They happen to have purchased two rather large facilities in the state of New York. So they're a New Jersey based company. And, when I say New Jersey, people often think, well, Jersey's literally the neighbor of New York. Geographically speaking, maybe so, but Jersey's big. So you
mm-hmm.
can have a company in Jersey and not know anything about doing business in New York, right? Purchase these two large facilities. These two large facilities get targeted by these labor unions. And the company didn't know what to do with it. So I go in, I start working with the employees, and all of a sudden the unions are pressing down on me. And because they didn't like the work that I was doing internal to the company, death threats were made to the point where the company ended up providing me with 24/7 undercover NYPD support, New York
Wow.
Police Department support, where I had my own bodyguards for the better part of 2 months as I did this work. So breaking out the windows of my car, finding out what hotel I was staying at. So I had this, hop multiple hotels to the point where the company just went ahead and got my hotel for me and changed the name of the person who was in the hotel
Jeez.
room. It was ugly. It was ugly, but I'm
Yeah.
proud to say that I went through that, and I'm not giving all the details as to what I went through, just sort of the some of the headlines. But I went through that only for the company to have increased their productivity, to increase their
Mm-hmm.
employee job satisfaction rate upwards of 60%.
Wow.
So that's another thing is that I'm the one that takes the bullets. I'm the one that takes the arrows. I'm the one that takes the nasty words that people throw out so that I can essentially help to make the companies better.
And so when you say that, like you're the one who takes the bullets and nasty words, the first thing jumps to my mind I want to ask you about is like you have to have a certain mindset in order to
Yeah.
do that. Every day people come to me and they're searching for things on Instagram on like how to not have their feelings hurt, how to not be so emotional, how not to take things personally. And here
Mhm.
you are probably taking that every single day in some
Yeah.
way, shape, or form, whether somebody's mad at you or, they're not happy that you're here and kind of stirring things up. So what is it that you do from a mindset perspective that allows you to have that not affect you?
I'm so competitive. right?
Yeah.
When I say I'm so competitive, it's my ambition. My ambition is exponentially large. And
Mm,
I truly believe that somebody is going to exist in the space. So why shouldn't it be me?
yeah.
And when I first got started in the industry, look, African American dude who exists in a predominantly white environment. And so from day one, people told me what I was not going to achieve. So I started to
Mm,
develop this mindset of I'm coming for everything you said I couldn't have. And that's what fuels me. But it's also this
yeah.
is my mission. This is my mission. Look, I go back to my original statement. I am a social worker that is getting to play in the grandest stage of all. I get to consult with the kings and queens of industry. And I don't have a formal business background. Like I said, I have a bachelor's degree in social work, master's degree in social work, and master's degree in human resources management. None of those things exactly lends to an MBA. None of those things it lends to expertise in finance or accounting or anything of that nature. But I know people, and
Yes.
I genuinely have been able to utilize my skill set around knowing people and to translate that into a business. We're now in the top 5% of employee and labor relations consultants in the country. So that's my mindset. But something that
Mm,
I've developed here in the past year, though, is I'm the dream of my ancestors. And when I say I'm the dream of my ancestors, I'm honoring my bloodline in everything that I do. So
mm.
I can't help but be excited because I feel like I carry them with me and I feel like they are protecting me and I feel like I am just living the dream. So that's where my mindset. That's why I get so excited talking about this stuff because
Yes.
I get to live it every day.
I love that. You have such a strong why. And I really want to kind of go back to that motto you just said, because people every day are trying to figure out, how do I overcome these, mental mindset challenges of, being offended and some of the things that you're dealing with. And for you
Right.
to really just say, if I can kind of summarize, it's like those are not as important as the motto that you live by every single day. The fact that, you're coming for everything that, they said you couldn't have. That's the sentence. And so somebody hurting your feelings or somebody offending you or being mad, like, it's irrelevant when you stick with that motto. And I think that's so huge for people to hear, to create their own motto and what's going to drive you every single day in order to kind of shrug those other things off as well.
Well, Angie, and let me say something. I
Yeah.
live by that motto, but the things people say, they hurt my feelings. There are
Mm,
times where I'll go back to my hotel room because that's my life. My life is airports, facilities, hospitals, hotel room, and the gym, right?
uh-huh.
There are times where I'm driving thinking about what people said to me and it hurts. And it's hard
Mm,
not to take it personal and it's hard not to want to lash out. Journaling has been my saving grace. I have a great group of friends. I have a mental performance coach. I have a great therapist. I have learned how to tap into other people because I used to
mm,
just hold all this stuff inside and it was killing me. It was killing me, literally killing me. So being able to share with them some of the things that I experienced, being able to share with them, not really what I go through, but how I feel about it, the things people
mhm,
say, having my friends in my life and having my parents in my life and having my family and my friends in my life has been the key to everything for me.
mhm.
So I have a great support system
Yeah, it
because
sounds like it.
if I didn't have the support system, I would not be here today.
Well, and so for what we just asked a second ago, there's the real meat of it right there. You
Yeah.
have that motto, but then you're also saying, I have a performance coach. I have a great therapist. I have friends. I have family. You've got community and these other outlets, and you're journaling, which, I'm a big fan of. So
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
important that people hear that. Yeah, that it's not something you go at alone, and you've got to have that time with yourself as well to develop that.
Yes.
So I want to ask you something about in kind of the employee culture right now, because something that gets brought up a lot, especially with people who are not of, the younger generation and they're the
Mm,
employers, they're going, and I see your smile, you already know where this is going, right? Like,
Absolutely.
oh my gosh, this generation, they don't want to do anything. They don't take initiative to do things. They're entitled to everything. They need days off for feelings. We can go on and on. What are you seeing, and what are your thoughts around that?
I'm seeing that, and I say this as a proud Gen Xer because nobody gives a damn about us.
Yeah.
They talk about the baby boomers, or boomers as they call them. They talk about the boomers.
Yeah.
They talk about millennials. They talk about Gen Z. They don't talk about us
I
because we
know
were
we
the
got skipped.
generation. We got skipped because we're the generation that is skippable. We were
Yeah.
taught how to work hard. We were taught how to show up. We were taught how not, talk back, and we just do our jobs.
I love
What I would
that. We
say,
were the skippable.
we're skippable. But what I would say, but we're probably the hardest working generation you're going to see, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
still currently in the workforce. But what I would say to the leaders of our generation and the leaders who kind of are at the tail end of the baby boomers, right? You're right. Millennials and Gen Z do not seem to have the same work ethic that we did. You're right. Millennials and Gen Z oftentimes can be quote unquote soft. But is there anything wrong with that?
Mm.
I work close to 80 hours a week. I don't hurt for creature comforts. The mortgage is paid, my car is paid, I can vacation, I can do all these wonderful things. I just don't have time to do it because all I do is work. And I sound like so many people of our generation. You have the millennials and the Gen Z who are saying, look, we've seen how hard our parents busted their butts to get to where they got to for companies that kind of didn't give a damn about them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to ask me to dedicate my life to you, I'm going to ask you to dedicate at least something called concern for me. Millennials and Gen Z are the two generations, but I'm especially going to talk about the Gen Z. They are generations full of heartbreak because we were brought up. I was born in 1974. I'm turning 50 in 2 weeks, February 13th. I was brought up with the idea of American exceptionalism. I was brought up with the idea that Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and all these muscle-bound, Dolph Lundgren, and all these muscle-bound people could rule the world with a machine gun and a machete, screaming America through their accents, right? These kids were not kids. I'm dating myself. These young folks were not brought up with the idea of American exceptionalism because they went to college like we told them to go. They took out school loans like schools, colleges across and universities across the country told them to do. And they come out, they're $300,000 in debt, but they're making $17.50 an hour if they're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
They think about the houses that they grew up in, knowing that they could never afford it today. They can't afford to get married. They can't afford to have kids. They can't afford to have a decent quality of life. Part of the reason why they're saying to you that they want you to protect their feelings is because really what they're saying is we just want you to hear us. Because we're used to not hearing anybody in the workplace. We're used to high-fiving each other and saying, get to work.
Mm-hmm.
If you even get a high five. So what I'll say to leaders is take a step back, get over yourself, recognize that you have a responsibility to lay out the job expectations. And those employees have a responsibility to follow those job expectations. But when they come to you and say, what about my feelings? Maybe it's ground for conversation, not just about their feelings, but about yours as well, because it's okay to have feelings.
Well, when you put it that way. But I also, even for me, my mind also goes to like, if you feel like you can't afford those, if you feel like you have all this debt, like, what's our answer? Get to work, right?
Truth.
Do more, right?
Truth.
Do more work. So and I hear you. I mean, it landed on me from a sense of like, yeah, they definitely grew up different. They've gone through different things, but it's a challenge, I feel like, to really shift what has typically worked, right? Working hard. And I'm not advocating to work 80 hours a week by any means. You need to start taking more vacations, Jason.
I know, right? I know. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. I just love what I do. But can I throw something at you and Andrew?
Yes, please.
Forgive me for interrupting you. It's
Yeah.
kind of our fault. It's our fault too. Because we grew up, many of us grew up accepting how our parents treated us, accepting how our parents raised us. But it seems like each generation is a bit easier on their kids based on the creature comforts of the environment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My grandfather, my grandfather was a cotton farmer with a third grade education and had 9 kids and said, I want my grandfather had third grade education and he insisted upon his kids getting education. I mean, in
Mm-hmm.
fact, he couldn't read. My grandfather was illiterate. But he would sit there at the kitchen table reading the newspaper because he was trying to impress his kids about the importance of reading. But no one had the courage to tell him because they knew my grandfather loved them that his paper was upside down because they weren't going to embarrass him.
Mm-hmm.
But because of my grandfather's desire for my father and for my, for my uncles and my aunts to have education, he said, I don't want you living your life picking cotton.
Mm.
They grew up picking cotton, but then they all left. My father's got his PhD. He's got 3 degrees. That's across the board for all of my relatives. And then they moved to the city. And city life was a little difficult, but it was not nearly as difficult as the farm life. And then they
Mm-hmm.
had us and we were raised in these suburbs and life was a little bit easier than what my father had it, what my mother had it. And then I had kids, but instead of having kids from, like my parents that, were lower middle class, my kids are upper middle class.
Mm-hmm.
So they have it a little bit easier. So it's hard for part of the reason why millennials and Gen Z don't want to accept responsibility is because we kind of made it easy for them.
That
And
is
then
true.
one day we said, well, your Obamacare runs out at 26, so get out of here. Go.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, wait a minute, you haven't equipped us for this.
Mm-hmm.
You mean I have to work? Right? Come
Right.
on now. So we're going to blame them to an extent, but we have to accept some blame on ourselves as well.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough right there. Yes, because it is. And you see that all the time. And it's interesting how this whole conversation, I could sit and talk all day with you about this.
Sure,
We've kind of turned
absolutely.
a corner with this. But it is. I mean, some of that responsibility, a lot of it comes back on the parents and the way you set them up and, making things easier. People all day long, well, I don't want my kids to go through what I went through. We make it
Yes.
easier. And that's kind of what creates it and the cycle. It'll be interesting to see how that shifts. I mean, times change always, right? So at what point
They do.
that changes. But I appreciate you going down that road with me because I know that so many people deal with that in the workplace environment and kind of just bringing it back to you going, just listen, it's almost like take your opinions and your feelings out of the judgment of them and look back at those roles, the expectations, are they meeting them? Kind of bring it more to the black and white part of it in the role and
Mhm.
what people are supposed to be doing. They can still feel that way, but are they meeting the expectations and showing up and doing the work?
Yeah, and society changes. The mark of a man when I was a kid was, did you go to Vietnam? Did you serve? Right?
Mm-hmm.
The mark of a man today in many quarters is, are you compassionate? Are you loving?
Yeah.
Do you listen well? Are you a good father?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, look, folks, life changes, society changes, and the expectations of men and women and everyone in between changes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if I'm smiling here, it's because life just rolls and I just try to roll with it.
Yeah. And that's why you're so good at what you do, because I think that's what's happening in companies all of the time, right? Whether
Amen.
it's new policies or new circumstances or issues, the turbulence, like what we talked about, it comes up. And you are truly this employee whisperer who can come in there, bring the people together and impact so many people. So I love what you're doing out there. And,
Thank you.
for anyone who's going, who is this guy? I've got to see him. Gosh, just turn on, like I said, CNBC, MSNBC. You'll see him all over the place there too. But let's
Thank
kind
you.
of wrap up with some tactics that people can really take away as
Mhm.
kind of from both sides, because you truly are in this middle seat and you help the employer, you help the employees. If you can come up with what's like even one or two great things for the employees to understand and take away from this and for the employers.
Yeah. One thing that I will say to employees is, and I listen to employees share their issues and concerns daily.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I would say to those employees, and I often say to employees, is don't assume that management hates you.
Mm,
And don't assume that management is not working hard for you. They are just like the typical person who gets so bogged down in the policies and the procedures that they forget to kind of raise their head, look around, and say, hey, I just want to let you know I care about you.
mm-hmm.
What I say for the employers is your employees really are working hard for you. But the one thing that they want from you more than anything else is they want to know that they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Mm.
So they need you to show them how to get there.
I cannot leave it just at that, because that piece right there that you just gave, like, employees want to know that they're part of something bigger than just themselves. Say more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Employees, when my grandfather, my poppy, as we called him, worked for Pittsburgh Plate Glass. I don't even know if they still exist, right? PPG, I think they're called. My grandfather, when he retired, he got a gold watch and a picture of his entire crew. And my grandfather was so proud of that watch.
Mm.
He was so proud of that picture. And he would show everybody. It's because they made him feel like he was part of something bigger than himself. He made him feel like he was part of this is during the day of segregation too. So please understand there's
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of elements within this. But
Sure.
they still made him feel like he was part of a family. So when he showed up every day, they were getting these products out that were benefiting families, that were benefiting corporations. He would drive around and look at buildings, at companies, and he's like, we put that glass in there. That's our glass. That's our glass. That made him feel part of something bigger than themselves. Today, the average employee knows that they just push a button, they move a product, and they have no idea where it goes. They have no idea about who it benefits. They have no idea about the families that they're supporting without knowing that they're supporting them. That's what I mean by giving people, allowing people to be part of something bigger than themselves. It's
Mm.
tying the mission of their job right back into the role. And that role becomes a mission. It becomes almost like a religion for people. And that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, such huge buy-in too when you do that, for the employees and retention.
I have watched employees who were so good, so smart, so sharp that could have gone someplace else and made a boatload of money, but they stayed in a particular organization because that organization made them feel like I have purpose.
Mm,
When you give people purpose, I don't care if it's in the workplace, I don't care if it's in society, that's what matters to people. And that's what they need. We're tribal by nature, but I can only be part of a tribe that makes me feel like this tribe is strong, effective, and it embraces me.
that right there. That's my big takeaway from this
All right.
podcast, this session right here. Yes, so huge. The purpose. And I'm thinking of so many people right now, and I'm sure a lot of companies and leaders who are listening are going, wow, that really rings true. And how do you start to bring that to each and every single person in your organization? And what a game changer that would be.
Absolutely.
Love it. See, you truly are the employee whisperer.
You make me feel good, Angie. You make me feel good. Thank you.
Well, you're doing such great things out there. Outside of me loving that huge smile and your happy face, you are truly changing lives out there in companies. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing and love seeing you everywhere on TV and just wish you the best.
Hey, thanks so much, Angie. You're a fantastic, fantastic interviewer. This was fun. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. And for people who are like, I need that employee whisper in my life,
Mhm.
we've put all this information out there. And yes, you are all over the place, but I'm
Sure.
assuming people can still reach out to you and can connect with you and have you in their companies.
Absolutely. You can go to hiregci.com, which is my corporate website. You can find me. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. You can find me and Jason Greer, as well as Instagram. I've only been doing, they had an account on Instagram since 2015, but I've only really been focusing on Instagram the past year, and we're killing it. So it's Jason.Greer.
Perfect.
And
All
as
right.
well as Twitter at Labor Diversity.
All over the place. Love it.
Yes,
Absolutely
ma'am.
love it. Thanks again for joining us, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me, Angie.
And that's another episode of Sharing Wisdom, you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you got some great insights from Jason. If you're that employer, take to heart what he said about giving your people purpose. And if you're that employee, love the piece about stop making up those stories. Don't assume anything. And if you know someone who needs to listen to this episode, forward it along and share, like, and comment. Have a great one.